I'm back. All right, so Mrs. Dudley, Mrs. Monday and Mrs. Kerr, they're playing on the same footy team. On Saturdays, Mrs. Dudley kicked 1/4 of the goals. Mrs. Monday kicked 1/3 of the goals and Mrs. Kerr kicked 5/12 of the goals. What fraction of the team goals were kicked by Mrs. Monday and Mrs. Kerr? So 1/3 and 5/12. Okay, that's the first part of our question. Let's get to it. We need to find a number that both 3 and 12 go into. So if we go up in our 3 times tables, 2 3s 6, 3 3s 9, 4 3s are 12. So 12 is a number that both 3 and 12 will go into. So everything on here, we needed to times by 4. And what do we do to a 12 to make it a 12? Well, we times it by 1. That's not too tricky. So let's start here. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. Okay. 5 times 1 is 5. And 12 times 1 is 12. Now, here is a much easier sum to do. So we know our answer is going to be over 12. 4 plus 5 is obviously 9. So together, Mrs. Monday and Mrs. Kerr kicked 9/12 of the goals. All right? They're obviously the stars of their teams. Now, there was another part to the question, what fraction of the team goals were kicked by Mrs. Dudley and Mrs. Monday? All right, Mrs. Dudley had 1/4. Mrs. Monday had 1/3. So let's have a look at what these two are kicking. No, it didn't work. All right, so 4 and 3. What are we going to have as our lowest common denominator? 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, and that's probably our best bet. So everything in here is going to be times by 4. Everything in here is going to be times by 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. Bring up our plus. 1 times 4 is 4. And 4 times 3 is 12. Now this is an easier looking sum. All right, we know our answer is going to be over 12. 3 plus 4 gives us 7. 7 over 12. So Mrs. Dudley and Mrs. Monday, they kicked 7 out of 12 goals together. You can see that Mrs. Monday and Mrs. Kerr are a slightly better team. Okay, they got 9 out of 12. Now, the last part of this question was what fraction of the goals were kicked by all 3 of these sporting heroes. So together, Mrs. Dudley had 1/4. Mrs. Monday has 1/3 and Mrs. Kerr has 5/12. So we're going to need to add all of those fractions together, okay? The first thing we need to do is find a number that they all go into. And you're probably thinking, oh, we've been looking at this 12, let's have a look here. So remember what we needed to do to a 3 to make it a 12 was times by 4. What do we need to do a 4 to make it a 12? We times by 3. And what do we need to do to a 12 to make it a 12? We times by 1. Okay? So we can use 12 as our lowest common denominator. So the first one, 1 times 3 is 3, over 4 times 3, which is 12, plus 1 times 4 is 4, 3 times 4 is 12, plus 1 times 5 is 5, and 1 times 12 is 12. All right, this is an easier sum to do. We know our answer is going to be over 12. So we've got 5 plus 4 plus 3. So 5 and 4 is 9. 3 is 12. 12 over 12, how many goals did these 3 women kick? They kicked every goal their team had, all right? 12 over 12 makes up 1 whole. 1, that's like 100%, 1 whole, it is everything, the whole lot. These 3 women were the only scorers for their team. What absolute heroes. You better give them a high five.